Good Wednesday to you, everybody in COM 831. Welcome to week boom, boom, six. Week 6 of 16. So not quite to the halfway point, but we are approaching it quickly. Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope, or at least good morning for me. I don't know what time it is when you're watching this video. Let's get this week started. But before we do, coffee. I don't have any more this morning because I've been up for a while and I am sufficiently caffeinated. So hang on one second here. Now I am sufficiently hydrated. Your communication instructor ready to go. Let's take a look at what we're going to do this week. And when I say we, fundamentally, I mean you, but I will tell you what I am also going to be doing. Okay. So if you look in Canvas, module 6, that is this week, you'll see we're going to continue our readings in macroeconomics, Tapscott and William, that is chapters 11 through 15. Then I've posted a little interview with Don Tapscott, who talks about some of the stories behind the story that is not only the book, but the guiding principles, philosophies for what they're up to. I think you might get a kick out of that. And then you have a new assignment this week. Okay, it's your organizational communication tool assignment. There's a link to the instructional sheet there in the module. I'll let you read it at your leisure. I mean, don't take too long because it's due November 3rd, which, we're in October. You've got a good chunk of time. But the purpose of this assignment is to give you a little creative freedom, notably while I'm grading part 1 of your paper. And the assignment is one in which I ask you to envision or identify a organizational technological tool, and it could be a digital thing or an actual physical thing that you know of, or if it doesn't actually exist, that you believe should exist, that would provide for or accelerate the organizational and communicational capacity of some group. It doesn't have to be a corporation. It could be a church. It could be a volunteer organization. Okay. So I want you to either pick an existing communication tool or think of one that doesn't exist. And then I want you to write up a description of this thing. And then you'll do a short video, no more than 10 minutes, in which you're pitching this. So, part of what I want you to do in this assignment is imagine that there's an audience out in front of you, and within the audience, there are several individuals who have big bags of money that you would much like to launch your communication, your organizational communication tool. How are you going to sell it? Okay. And some of the some of the suggested items to have in there and suggested approaches for your presentation are laid out in the sheet. All right. And I don't think I have a link in the assignment section yet to upload this thing, but I will coming very soon to a Canvas portal near you. All right. And then we have discussion questions this week. Now, to get us back on schedule, I'm going to revert to the Monday night, Tuesday morning due date for week 6 discussion questions, because I push a little bit to give you a little bit of a buffer while you were completing part 1 of your papers, which brings me to the other thing that I'm going to be doing this week. So I'll be looking at part 1 of your papers and sort of getting a feel for where everybody is at. And then probably towards the end of the week, I will start maybe weekend. I will start grading them. All right. As I mentioned back when I posted the assignment, the purpose of breaking the one paper into two parts is not to give you more work to do, but rather to give you more meaningful feedback about how you're doing. Writing is a developmental process. It's a craft. It's it's something that you get better and better at as you practice, and that includes me. And I write a lot. I write personal stuff. I write professional stuff in a number of different capacities. I'm constantly trying to improve my writing and seeking feedback from other writers. In fact, I have a book that I'm pulling together right now. It's a series of essays that focuses on the development of our full selves through our encounters with God and nature. And that, let me allow me a slight digression here. That's a process that goes on all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. That is, it's sort of like this. Okay, I'm getting out my doodly pads again. All right, it's sort of like this. See if I can get that to focus. Okay, that a true sense of who we are. It's right here. That would be nice rounded circles. Exists in the middle of this threefold relationship: the relationship between God, our you might call this your external self, the self that you're aware of, you're sort of aware of, how well you respond to that self, your physical self. Okay, so you're over here, and then the space that you're in. Now this space can be inside space, outside space, sacred space, non-sacred space. However, there's something unique that happens to that awareness of who we are and our relationship to the creator when we step out into natural spaces that are not organized. Say like this, this office that I'm sitting in is a space. It's a communication. I mean, it's a communication that I designed. Okay. But it is a radically deconstructed, that is all the elements of a space taken apart and then reconstructed, put back together in a very specific way to send a very specific message. And that's what most of the space is that we live in, whether it's sitting inside our car, moving around our city or town, in our living room, in our kitchen, in our bathrooms, our bedrooms, being on a plane, being in a restaurant. These are spaces that have been deconstructed and then reconstructed with the intent of a communication. Fine. However, a natural space which has not been deconstructed and reconstructed by humans is a space that has been constructed by God, by the creator. And so it sends a particular message to us about us. So this book is a collection of essays that I've written over the years, which explores that threefold relationship, all with the aim of encouraging, the reader, encouraging each of us to find our authentic self, the self that the designer's blueprint was meant to reveal, both to ourselves and to the world. Okay. Most of these essays, some of them I've written years ago. They've gone through editors and publishers. Doesn't matter. As I revisit them, change them a little, try to find a way in which they fit well together. There are different lengths and different topics, but I need sort of a uniform feel. They can't feel like they've just all been slapped together and then bound into a book. That's not going to work. I rely heavily on editors and other writers. Okay, and so should you. Develop that as a habit, relying on good writers to help you with your work. So this exercise of splitting it in half is designed to help you. With that in mind, all right, I'm going to be thorough in my examination and evaluation of your work. And this is why, this can't be a draft paper, because it's like, okay, I mean, I draft a lot of things too, and I'll show you. In fact, I'm even as I'm fit, and I'm about 1.5 essays away from finishing this current book, and which is like right here, sort of the draft of the current book. Okay, and as I'm doing this, I'm already drafting the next one. Drafts are fine, but drafts are just what they are, rough sketches. All right. Most of the work that we're evaluated on through life is not a rough sketch. It's intended to be the finished product. So this has to be a finished product. So if you didn't turn in a finished product, and I don't know because I haven't looked at them yet, you're going to lose points. Okay. I will read what you have done carefully. You'll find for most of the time, my remarks won't extend past page 2.5. And what are you supposed to take away from that? Well, the message is that whatever you're doing well, or that's working, whatever you're doing that's working, and whatever you're doing that's not working, continue to do this throughout, and don't do that again throughout. So if you see a comment from me about saying, yeah, this really works, continue to do that thing, and whether it's a citation or a particular presentation of an idea or organization, the paper, great, do that throughout. If you see a correction from me saying, oh, hey, you really got to tighten up your writing, there's just too much verbiage here, the citation the citation format is wrong, and I'm not looking for things to knock you on the head with by listing these. I'm going through things in my mind that are common to us as writers. Your reference to one thing is too ambiguous, and so on and so forth. Fix it throughout the whole paper. All right. And you might be saying, well, if I knew that I was doing it, I wouldn't have done it. So why don't you read through the whole paper and show me everywhere that I did it? Okay, that's counter to what we're trying to do here. What are we trying to do? Yes, you want subject mastery. Okay, that's important. That's actually the smaller part of what we're trying to do. The larger part of what we're trying to do is skills mastery. An essential part of skills mastery is you applying yourself to seeing on the page where you are mastering skills and where you are not mastering skills. That's what I want you to come away with this from, is a sense, as you read your own writing, to try to work towards the ability to develop a sense of that word, that's not working. Oh, hey, yeah, I have a sense, I have a feeling that this is working. Okay. And so, you got to apply yourself and bend in a little bit. Okay. In addition to my comments and, making sure that you have done not just draft work, but actual work. I haven't looked in the assignment folder to see who's in there and who's not. If you didn't turn in a paper and you didn't make arrangements with me as to the whats and wherefores of it being in late, and then most importantly, you didn't make specific arrangements about when it was coming in, okay, you're going to lose points. And the points that you lose from not completing the work, that is just submitting draft work and then not turning it in on time, those are points that you cannot recuperate in the final version, because that's not a rewrite issue, that's a follow the directions issue. Okay, so since I heard from no one, can you hear from no one? I haven't heard from anyone, maybe that's better put, who asked me, hey, can I turn this in later and then gave me a specific date as to when later was. And I don't mean some sort of a vague, hazy, mushy, well, I'll get it into you sometime. I mean, imagine you went to your job and you had a project or a process, and they had a deadline on it, and the deadline approached, and you just sent an email to your boss apropos of nothing, that is just out of nowhere, saying, "Oh yeah, hey boss, I've been dealing with a lot of stuff lately, and you know how it goes, and I'm working on the process product, and I should have it to you, sometime, I don't know, later this week, maybe. Thanks for for being a good boss. See you later." How well would that fly? Probably fly like a lead balloon. Okay, meaning it wouldn't. Okay. So if you haven't turned in your assignment, you need to get in touch with me and ask me, can I turn this in? And then, we'll have a little discussion, and then we need to decide on when specifically, not some vague point in the future, when specifically the assignment is coming in. Okay. All right. And then finally, for this week, as I mentioned last week, I'm going to be grading your discussion questions, weeks 1 through 4. And so that means that weeks 1 through 4 are now closed. Right. So if you haven't gotten in the answers, and really, when you think about it, if you go past the week that the question is in, you're missing most of the point of the exercise, because you're not having a dialogue with your students, with your fellow classmates, the other students. That's what I meant. Now you're having a monologue, okay? Because everybody else has moved on, baby. You're just answering the questions from week 3 or whatever it is, and the rest of your colleagues, your cohort in this class, they're on to week 4. Who are you talking to when you're saying, "Oh yeah, that's a great point"? It's nice, but it's discussion. Die, meaning 2 of you at least. Okay, so weeks 1 through 4 closed. All righty, as not to belabor the point, let's take a look at the questions from module from week 5 and see what you did. Question number 1: despite the controversy on the science of climate change, there is, excuse me, general agreement that a green economy is emerging in Western nations like the U.S. Do you see a new generation of energy prosumers, as Tapscott and William envision in the U.S. and the West? Please explain and support your argument with research, like a published article or a study. Okay, attach it to your answer. I mean, as I wrote this question, I'll get to your answer here in just a second. I was sitting there thinking about it, going, yeah, I'm not sure if in the future the direction is a green energy economy, because there have been Western nations, Germany stands out as one of them, which had rapidly converted over to so-called green energy sources. And I say that with, a hint of irony on purpose, because they're not really green. They don't save carbon emissions, but that's another discussion. And it's not working. And they are working as fast as they can to go in the opposite direction. So I'm not sure that this is the direction. But let's see what you had to say. Valerie, despite ongoing debates about the science of climate change, data indicates the United States and other Western countries are transitioning towards a green economy where prosumers play a pivotal role. Okay, you're saying the question back to us. That's great. Tapscott and Williams predict that widespread cooperation would disrupt established businesses, and energy markets are now following this trend. Millions of homes and businesses are installing distributed solar panels, participating in community solar projects, buying electric cars, which blur the lines between energy consumer and prosumer. The concept of prosumer is no longer just theory, but increasingly become a reality as homes generate power for the grid while also using it. Okay, that is true. that is true that you have people who are buying solar panel, having solar panels installed on their houses, and then if they produce power beyond their own needs, they sell it back to the grid. That is the distribution, the grid. It's a grid is the physical thing, like all the wires, but it's also it's synonymous with the distribution of electrical power throughout a region. And because unless you start at a really, really high amperage, and the amperage is the rate of flow of the electrical voltage. One of the problems we have with electricity is the means through which it travels. Because unless it starts with extremely high amperage, that is the rate of flow, it doesn't travel well. It loses intensity as it goes. So why? Because the pathways, the conductors along which it travels, the wires, a lot of the power, a lot of the energy, I should say, in the electricity is lost through heat. It drops. And this is why you have booster stations along the way when you have long distance high power lines that take electricity from solar and wind farms and way far away to large cities way far away. So, there's some physical limitations, but yes, this is happening. Does that technically fit the definition of prosumerism? Not really. Because remember, prosumer is one in which the consumer is also helping to develop and produce the product. So is the consumer, and this isn't a criticism of you, Valerie, is the consumer helping to distribute the product by selling energy back to the grid? Yeah. Okay. Have you found instances in which consumers are also becoming researchers and developers in better ways to produce energy? That may be out there. I don't know that it isn't. Okay, that would be interesting. Okay, question number 2. Even before COVID, Regent University was moving towards developing the University 2.0, or these numbers in effect are just labels. They don't actually denote something. But 3.0, we call it University Zippity Doodah, if you like. One label that you slap on something as good as another, except for Zippity Doodah doesn't conjure the same imagery as 2.0 or 3.0. That features collaborative learning and knowledge co-produced by faculty and students working together. What practical innovation would you recommend, and as discussed in Chapter 8, that Regent should fully embrace and implement now? Okay. Charlene, let's take you. I would recommend that Regent University provide a collaborative course development model in which students and faculties work together to create course content, assignments, and learning materials. Chapter 8 explains how open collaboration and peer production can lead to new waves of innovation and build knowledge and networks that are more nimble, responsive, and fit for the purpose. That's a really interesting answer. Hang on one second here. I'm just gonna shut something off. A fair criticism, and I've been in this business a long time, so if anybody is qualified to make this criticism, it's me and others who've been in this business a long time. A fair criticism of academics as a discipline. Not everywhere that academics are taught, but academics as a discipline. 2 fair criticisms. Number 1, academics as a discipline in most of the colleges, most of the disciplines that you participate in is, and I'll use this word on purpose, significantly removed from an awareness and response to market forces. It seems as if, and this I think is a legitimate debate for you as a student, and for those of you who are teachers and want to continue and go on to be teachers in academic systems, it's a reasonable debate. What's the purpose of an academic institution? Is it to craft knowledge or impart knowledge and craft perspectives that drive the market? Or is it to provide information and skill sets that respond to the market? I think depending on the discipline, you can make reasonable arguments in both directions. And they're not mutually exclusive, but they don't necessarily go together. So on the whole, academics as a discipline tends to be disassociated from the market because, quite frankly, the ruling model of the two that I laid out for you there is that academics has for a long, I'm talking like a millennium here, time, crafted ideas, processes, and produce people that drive the market rather than training people that respond to the market. Okay, but that's one of its first issues, is it tends to be disassociated from the market. Secondly, and going hand in hand with the first issue, the second issue is it tends to lag in its response to the market, sometimes by as much as 5 to 10 years. And for the participant in the process, meaning you, the student, that's no good, man. I mean, if you're coming out of an academic program in computer science, you're a computer programmer. What might happen in 5 or 10 years is of no value to you when you graduate, and suddenly, huzzah, because nobody figured out, how to adequately prepare you as a computer programmer for the disruption that artificial intelligence was bringing to the market, in which AI bots were being set up to do a lot of the mundane, repetitious work that's the bulk of programming. And suddenly, your unemployment rate in 2025 as a newly graduated computer science person, a newly graduated programmer, is higher than the national average. It's higher than art history majors. And I love art history, but something's really out of whack in the preparation of people to hit the market when those people who hit the market have an unemployment rate higher than art history majors. And the function of those people is one of the essentials to how our economy and society works. So, could programs benefit from more real-time input from students who tend to be more concerned with the market because, they want a job? I think so. Institutionally, do I think that instructors, by and large, not all of them, are ready and willing to respond to input from students and feedback about the market? There, I'm not so sure. But good answer. Okay. Question number 3. Tapscott and William advocate for scientific discovery, knowledge, and innovation become more open in the U.S. during the next decade. Do you believe that it will? I have my own thoughts about this, but let's ask you, Emily. I go back and forth on how this, whether or not. Okay, let me see if I'm getting this right. I go back and forth on how this, whether or not this will become more open. Okay. In some ways, I've seen society become more transparent through social media regarding their lives, similar to ways even described in the book of Open, Honest Communication. On the other hand, the fear of privacy issues have led people to become even more guarded than before. In some ways, we seem to be learning more, leaning more into a we culture. Okay, now I'm not picking on you, Emily, but for everybody, make sure that you read through your posts before you post them. Okay, into a we culture because of how we value connection, transparency, collaboration. That being said, the U.S. is still very individualistic culture who like honing their own unique characteristics, talents, ideas that help them express their individualism. And sharing insights, collaborating on projects may make some people uncomfortable as they don't want their ideas to be stolen or duplicated. This isn't even in consideration with most individuals, but the U.S. may want to safeguard discoveries through and research to keep ahead of other countries as well. Okay, I tend to agree with you. One of the things that we're seeing as the collaboration goes up, and I'm looking for a book here. Hang on a second. I'm looking for two books right here and right here. That's one of those rare instances in which I actually have the books that I want close at hand. One of the things that we're seeing in the development of cultural norms that are emerging from life in this mediated space. Okay, and what we mean by that is that you're watching me, you're listening to me, but I'm not here in front of you. Okay, a representation of who I am, video, is here in front of you. Who I am and who you are is being that the communication is being mediated by the representation. So as we see society change in response to more and more time in this mediated space, we're seeing some basic assumptions and values. And I don't mean values in the sense of, oh, the things that we hold dear. I just mean the stuff that we believe. Okay, I use that as a neutral term. We're seeing those change. Here's a book I want to recommend to you. Okay, it's called The Shallows: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains, and it's by an author named Nicholas Carr. All right, and one of the sections in Nicholas Carr's book, The Shallows, that he takes a look at is what's happening to the fundamental notions, the underlining ideas about property. And one of the things that he discovers through some really, really well done research and some surveys is that the more and more things go online, the more and more people assume that if I find it online, then it belongs to me just as well as it belongs to somebody else, as it belongs to anybody. Sort of like, well, it's just lying around on the ground. It's in our common space. Like you dropped it in the middle of the street, so it doesn't belong to you anymore specifically. I happen to stumble upon it, belongs to me. And he takes a look at the music industry, takes a look at the movie industry, and then he takes a look at things like the software industry. And he wonders, he ponders, there's this intersection, negative intersection, because one's trying to go up and the other one's going down. The potential for profit in the distribution of new processes, be they scientific or otherwise, is going up because our ability to reach larger and larger markets through this mediated space goes up. All right. So you're seeing a lot more stuff being stuck online. However, at the same time, there's this change in what people assume to be property, mean, and we'll use, specifically private property, mean belongs to somebody but not to you. Those are changing, and they tend to be moving in the opposite direction. That is, that they're becoming less and less the notion that this belongs to the originator, and you don't take it and you don't use it and you don't just download it and now it's yours and you don't pay for it. That threshold is going lower and lower. Nicholas Carr doesn't address this, where that intersection is going to lead specifically, because that's not what he's up to in his book. He's up to it's a diagnostic, or he's saying, hey, this is what's happening. But one of the places that it's likely going is, and you see this with information, is the ability, the willingness of organizations that put information up to share it freely is going down, because not keeping things behind a paywall is reducing their ability to realize revenue on the work that they put in, and it claws back, it reduces their ability to capitalize on the potential for greater revenue through wider distribution online. I mean, excuse me, it's allergy season for me, so it's like, it's a constant thing. Okay. If you have an Amazon account, like say Amazon Prime, now I can't speak to Spotify because I don't know their business model, and you have a music account through Amazon, or through an Amazon Prime if you have movies, and you buy the movie or you buy the song, you may or may not be aware you don't actually own that thing. What you're buying is the ability to access that movie or that song any time of day or night, any day of the week, without additional fees, until Amazon decides that, one, there'll be additional fees, or two, we're just taking that song down or taking that movie down. You don't own it. You're just renting it long term, even though the word in the Amazon account when you go to a movie or a song says buy. All right, so there's openness, kind of, sort of. So what the future will bring, don't know. Hard to predict as those two forces begin to collide and compete with each other. Okay, question number 4. What do you think of the new model of collaborative healthcare? Is it or is it not a solution to the current U.S. healthcare crisis? Are you and your family's member of a personal healthcare provider embracing this new model? Okay. Now here, I think Tapscott and Williams are, well, I'll be very frank. I think they're, one, tremendously naive, and two, I think they are wrong about the nature of the problem with healthcare. But let's get to your answer, James. Tapscott and Williams argue that there is a need to move from institution-centric model to collaborative model in order to give more empowerment to patients with electronic health records. It allows different department specialists who may be consulting on a patient to share information more easily, also allowing telemedicine. Is this a solution to the current U.S. healthcare crisis? I would say it definitely is part of the solution, maybe not the sole solution. I think there are many moving parts of the healthcare system, and the collaborative model is definitely a contributor to the solution, but there's still concerns with privacy issues that are not addressed in this model. I do, you say, James, benefit from my healthcare providers embracing this new model. I have apps for my different providers that I can access all the information about different lab results. I can request refills of my prescriptions or the paperwork for my last appointment, my allergist and respiratory therapist in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I have my yearly appointment via telemed because I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay. Good answer. So yes, there are some things, some processes within the system that the new collaborative model can help in terms of fixing the system. Now, start thinking about your technology, your communication technology tool, the next exercise. Okay. And before you pick the thing that already exists or the thing that you believe ought to exist, spend some time with the fundamental question: what's the real problem? And try to get down to, as foundational of a level as you can. All right. And then work your way out from there. All right. So let's do that with healthcare. What is the central problem with the American healthcare system? Okay. The central problem is it costs too much. It is terribly expensive for those who pay for it through insurance, and it's terribly expensive for the taxpayer who pays for it through programs like Medicaid and Medicare. Okay. Why is it terribly expensive? Well, part of the reason, and this is the collaborative model, and I'm part of the same sort of system in the town that I live in, and I have a health portal, and I can go in and check things and request things and look back at lab results. And okay, so part of it is that, or part of it's relieved the cost by not having to go into an office. by not having to make an appointment to have some prescriptions refilled or ask simple questions, because this goes cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. For me as a consumer, first and foremost, remember, the purpose of healthcare is to serve the consumer. Healthcare is a business. Healthcare is not a right. Okay. And I know that strikes some as controversial, but in our system, a right is clearly defined as something that the government cannot do to you. The government cannot compel you to testify against yourself. The government cannot violate your fundamental right of privacy without just cause. The government cannot prohibit you from peaceably assembling and expressing your opinion, even if the government doesn't like it. Rights are things that the government cannot do to you. Rights are not the things that you insist that government provide for you. That's not a right. You might say, well, we should have, our government should be providing things X, Y, and Z for us. Okay, but that's not a right. So I encourage you, by way of communication accuracy, to avoid that language. All right, so healthcare is a business, and the business of business is to serve the consumer, which is you, which is me. So having the telemedicine, having the online stuff helps with the cost a little bit. The major reform that U.S. healthcare needs to reduce the central problem, and that is that it costs too bloody much. It has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with two incompatible assumptions. All right, you ready? And I know something about this. I have a background in science and health, and I was for a time the health and science writer for the national newspaper Epoch Times. There are two incompatible assumptions at work that continue to drive the cost of healthcare, and here they are. Assumption number one: Americans have become highly individualistic. We didn't used to be this way. It may surprise some of you to know. If you read back, and people that are like, yeah, well, the founders envisioned, and yada, actually read the founders. Even, whether it's like the Federalists and the non-Federalists, they did not envision a system in which everybody was doing their own thing. It was not the system I'm not saying, that's where everybody get back there. I'm just telling you where it is we came from. So we have a society in which emphasis on the individual is at an all-time high. We have people that run around, and it doesn't take a majority. Revolutions are not caused by majorities. They're caused by concentrated minorities. That is, those who are ideologically concentrated and focused, or those, as I'm going to describe, that in terms of their outcome of their behavior, it becomes concentrated and focused. So we have individuals that run around who assume that as autonomous individuals, they have the freedom to do anything they want, to put anything into their bodies, or put their bodies into anything that they want. And that means drugs, alcohol, highly processed foods, which is a lot of the problem. No exercise, some year after year after year after year after year. That's their right to do these things to themselves. And then on the other hand, and these are the two incompatible ideas. On the other hand, the notion that the government, which is really the composite of me, you, and everybody else, the government doesn't exist as this sort of third party. It's really a hired agency by way of the ballot box to take and spend the money of the collective, which means all of us. So the government, goes the other idea, has to pay for it. Those two ideas are incompatible. You cannot have one where it says, I have the right to do anything to myself, whether that's improve or harm, for as long as I want. You, meaning everybody else, has the obligation to pay for it. Those two cannot exist, at least not indefinitely, together. They're contravening forces. It's like a building that's leaning one way. Okay, there's a force of gravity on a building, and it needs to be straight up and down, as the force of the building is straight up and down. When the force of the building becomes at an angle, and that gravitational pull is this away instead of this away, there's a force in the building this way. At some point, something's got to give. Either the building has to be straightened out, or this force will straighten the building out in a horizontal fashion. Those two ideas don't go together. And people say, well, we should have a system like Britain, or we should have a system like Canada. I've been lived in Canada and Britain, and participated in their healthcare system. Those who advocate such say, well, they have so much better outcome than we do. Well, that's true. They in general have better health outcomes than we do. Or in other countries that I've lived in, European countries, France being one of them. The significant difference between those systems and our system, if you engage in a long-term negative behavior, say smoking or overeating or lack of exercise, and then you develop a problem that's traceable to that, it's not that you won't get care, but you go way to the back of the line, man. You're not going to get immediate care, and you're not going to get top tier care. They're not going to spend the money saying, hey, look, this is a bargain. This is a contract. This is a social contract, to reference Rousseau. And the contract goes like this. You, the individual, believe that we, the collective, have an obligation to take care of you. Okay, we agree. So this is Britain, this is France. But then the collective asks, what's your obligation as an individual to take care of us? They say it's your obligation as an individual in terms of this bargain, this arrangement, to take care of us by taking care of yourself. And in the same way that you don't expect us to fail in the agreement of our obligation, that is, we're going to continue to pay for you, we don't expect you to fail in your obligation to us, that is, take care of you. And if one of the two parties in the arrangement fails in their obligation, you break the deal. Okay, until we get past that, we are never, ever, never going to reduce the cost of our healthcare system, and we are never, ever, ever going to solve the problems of our healthcare system, because the fundamental problem is it costs too much. And the reason that it costs too much is there's so much in the way that has to be done. Something like 85% of expenditures of federal healthcare go to take care of conditions that develop from chronic individual neglect. And this, sounds like you're shaming and blaming. No, we're analyzing and diagnosing. So can that problem be attacked through a collaborative system as envisioned by Tapscott and William? Could we use a collaborative system to start to, and you can't, it's, this is a big ship that has a lot of momentum. Going in this direction for a long, long time, this idea that the individual has the right to do whatever he or she wants to his or her body. Okay. And you can't just whip the wheel and suddenly, make an immediate course correction and, snap the rudder off. The thing has to be gentle, gradual. So could we use these collaborative spaces to, first encourage individuals to take care of themselves, and then to, provide incentives for those who do? That is sort of the more carrot, less stick approach to changing human behavior. Maybe. Okay. Could be. All right, everybody. We are way over time, about 10 minutes. Thank you very, very much for those of you that got your papers in already. I'll be looking at those. Remember, discussion sections, discussion weeks, modules 1 through 4, weeks 1 through 4 closed because I'll be grading those this week. All right. Take a look at that communication tool exercise. If you have any questions, please email me. Oh yeah, some of you, that are preparing to do research for your paper have been asking me to set up a Cayuse account. Thank you very much. I'm happy to do that. If you think you're going to be surveying people as part of your paper, remember, you've got to get human subject research approval from the university, or I just can't let you do it. So if you don't have a Cayuse, Cayuse, however you want to pronounce it, account, ask me, we'll get you one. Okay, everybody, I will see you next week on Canvas. I think about you. I pray about you. God bless you.